Today we are trying to turn lemons into lemonade for the second week in a row, and we are going to tear down this Mitsubishi 4B11T. Now this is the engine out of a 2008 Lancer Evolution. It's a pretty cool car in its own right. However, this deal isn't really a deal because I bought a 2010 Mitsubishi Lancer Ralliart, which has the same engine, and somehow I received this engine bolted into the car, and yet Copart said engine start program. Well, maybe, but let me show you. This is my biggest extension. It is a 34-inch, half-inch drive, solid piece of tool steel, and I hardly ever use it, but I'm going to demonstrate what is wrong with this engine right now. This is not magic. I think I can see it from here. This engine is one of the most balanced engines we've had on the channel. And by balanced, I mean it has a pretty good sized hole in the front, and as you can see, my floor on the other side, there is, okay, it's a little imbalanced. The hole in the back is a little bit bigger, just a little. The next question is, does this engine turn over? The crank bolt's turning, and now the crank is. So maybe it did run. Maybe Copart said, engine start program, because this thing ran just fine with a slightly increased crankcase ventilation. The 4B11T shares its architecture with both the Hyundai and Kia Theta 2, as well as the Chrysler 2.4 liter. Those engines were all developed together. However, only a few of the parts will interchange. So that's why it may look a little familiar, but I promise you most of this engine is just Mitsubishi. The very first thing I'd like to do is pull the coils and the plugs. Well, let's take a look at the spark plugs, and they don't look bad, which is a relief, because if I can get some good a good cylinder head out of this, I won't do so bad. It'd be nice to get a few parts to sell out of this instead of just a bunch of scrap. Next, I'm going to remove the dipstick tube, and it's going to be fine. Like I said, it's fine. And we'll start unbolting the brackets to hold the intake. All right, the intake is now loose. All right, I've got a couple of vacuum hoses here. Actually, I think we can just take all of this off, and I don't even need to do anything with these. Yeah, and it'll all come off with the intake manifold. There is one hose in the way, so we can get this thing off. Come on, clamp. That just fell right off. I think this should just come right off now. Perfect. Let's take a peek down the intake ports, and my, these are clean. Everything looks pretty good so far. Now, cylinder 3 appears to be the problem. The valves are slightly open, so that could mean that they are bent. But I don't see chunks of metal, which is a really good sign. And while we're here, let's look at the exhaust. I don't see anything too wild in here. Those are open partially. They could be bent. It's really hard to tell. But they're all pretty similar colored. The next first thing I'd like to do is peel the valve cover off. The valve cover already feels loose. That's pretty clean. It's actually spotless. Well, this is absolutely fantastic looking. It is super clean and even has aftermarket head studs that look like ARPs to me. So it's been studded, which means that it's likely been gone through. Looks like it's got brand new cam gears in it. The chain looks great. Everything looks really good. And now I was told that this engine was locked up in 2023. So maybe he had it rebuilt. Maybe. Let's get some brackets off. Get this out of the way. More bracket bolts. All right, let's get the crank pulley unbolted. Oh. For the record, there's no woodruff key or crane key. Interesting. Maybe we'll find it inside. Now it is time to tickle the timing cover off. Start with this bracket down here. See if we can pop this off. They leave you a lot of places to pry. It's actually quite nice. This part could be nicer. Wow. Well, this looks fantastic except where it doesn't, which is a little profound. It's fine. Looks like it's got a newer chain set in it. I'll look at the date codes once these rails are off. But one thing that doesn't look good is this powdery substance right here and right here. And it kind of looks like whoever cleaned this surface up kind of got some splatter from it. This is gritty. This is aluminum or whiz wheel material. Now, I've been doing this for a little bit of time. If you use a whiz wheel or something abrasive and you get the tailings, let's call it, the dust off of it, you get that off of it and it gets into parts of the engine, it can totally wreck an engine. So to see this inside of an engine, to see all these fine particles of metal and aluminum in a place that could get into the oiling system is not a good sign. All right, before we pull it apart, let's see how the timing system looks when we turn it over. Everything looks pretty good. It's a good time to see what Uncle Rodney feels like. I think he's down for the count with this one. Everything else feels pretty good. Let's go ahead and peel the timing system off. We'll start with the tensioner. No safety toe needed. Sometimes it'll be under tension and stuff will move, but I think we're good. Let's go ahead and pull the bridge guide out. Look at that. She's a beaut. As I suspected, the chain guides are newer. Now this looks like it would be maybe original. You see that color? If this was original, this would be the same color, but this is clearly newer. Although it does have a date code from 2019, this could have been replaced and then reused. I'm not really quite sure. It could have also sat on the shelf for a while after it was made. We don't really know when it was installed. But everything looks really nice. They're definitely in great shape. I don't play basketball. Before I start cracking the cam cramps loose, I would like to pull the variable valve timing solenoids because if there was any metal suspended in the oil, usually the screens in these will catch it. Well, there are no screens to collect any pay dirt, but I don't see any debris on the oil that came off of these things. Now it is time to cam the clamps loose, see what they look like. Oh, we're gonna have to give these a little boop.
Boop, 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 boop.
Well, I'm happy to report that the journals in the head look pretty nice. The only thing that doesn't look nice in here are the buckets. It looks like they got some pretty heavy wear. Every time I see that, I always think maybe it's got aftermarket cams in it. But the cams looked stock. You get over here, it's hard to tell if these have been reground. Usually they'll have some markings on them, and I just don't see any. If someone knows more about these than I do, because I am certainly not an expert on 4B11s, feel free to chime in the comments, because I'm all ears about learning on these things. But the cam caps, they're a little rough. They're not terrible. That's probably the worst journal on the camshaft, and I can't feel it with my fingernail. So I'm going to still consider these very usable. I'm not sure why the color is dark on some of these. It doesn't wipe off. But yeah, so far so good. I might come out all right. Let's go ahead and crack the head bolts loose. Or should I say nuts? Head nuts. Oh, that's tight. I am going to try to save all these with the hardware because, well, you can technically reuse head studs. The front two ones are bolts. I don't know if they're factory or not. All right, now I need to lift the head. It's going to be a little more challenging with studs because I got to get it straight up to clear them, but not terrible. Huh. It's good until it's not. Head gasket. It does not look like a factory gasket. Well, yeah, it is. Hold on. Well, this one has definitely been apart, and somewhat recently, because these are pretty clean. That one looks like it's been wiped off. This one, bad things have happened. It definitely destroyed the crown. You can see the width of the ring here. There's just little pieces of piston on top of the piston. But it's actually a pretty good thing. I'll show you why in a second. The head, it looks like it's been resurfaced by an inexperienced head resurfacer. Usually they have a much nicer finish than this. But the cylinder in question is this one right here. And it doesn't look terribly beat up. There's a couple marks. Let's see if I can park my light here. There's a couple chunks. Oh, those are embedded in the valve. They're out now. I would definitely recommend getting the valve checked. But I don't see any overwhelming issues. I bet you there's a little bit of valve damage there, if this will focus. I bet you there's a little bit of valve damage there. You can see that the valves kissed the piston. These cylinders look good. I think the cylinder head is going to be very serviceable. I think I got some good head out of it. Time for some science. Strange. I think this is a skewed test. That's not supposed to happen. All right, turn it upside down. Crank it. Yeah. Keep going. You got to turn it all the way over. Yeah, you see how it's turning the engine? Those are called head studs. I think you got to go with mommy now.
Oh, bye-bye.
Bye-bye, sweetheart. Well, let's continue where my daughter left off. Ooh, it sounds like a cash register. Let's get the little piston pieces out of here so they don't go in the drink. We still may lose some parts. I'm going to get it about halfway there. I think we're just going to make a mess on the floor, and I'll just deal with it. It's going to be fine. There's no need for a pan. I hope. Look at all that coolant. It's fine. Oh, it's dropping engine pieces. You know, I probably should pull the pan. I'm going to pull the pan at an angle. Barely made a mess. Another thing I noticed, now that I'm looking at it, it looks like it's trying to make an exit, or something is probably that connecting rod. Get the pan unbolted. All right, that is all the oil pan bolts. We're going to roll it back over and pry it off in the upright position. Oh, wow. Well, right off the bat, that is the small end of a rod. And we're just gonna pour out the rest of this engine. There's a lot. What we can do is we can use a magnet through the debris. There's piston squirter, and pick up the ferrous metal. That's a ring. It's a connecting rod. I can kind of see some of it. Connecting rod. This is how we sort it. All right, the rest of that looks to be aluminum. All right, well, a few identifiable pieces. That is an oil squirter for a piston. This could be a rod cap bolt, or it could be, which that's what it looks like to me, but it could also be the bolt that holds down the piston squirter. I can't really see or read anything on that one. It's a grade. Nothing else. There's the small end of the rod. It's all connecting rod. And then this is all block and piston, mainly piston, but a little bit of block in here, obviously. This is not part of a piston here. There is a piston circlip right here. I don't know why my magnet didn't pick it up, but we'll put that over there for when we fix this. And then when you look in the pan, lots of smaller debris stuck in here. The one thing I don't really see, now there is glitter, don't get me wrong. But I don't see like a copper hue here. And that is usually, the copper hue would usually come from a connecting rod bearing. And I just don't see that here. This is definitely some powdered aluminum. But that's what I'm seeing. All right, now we're going to rotate this thing over and see just how bad this damage is. Might be a little more juices that come out of this. We'll be all right. Is it bad? Well, it's not good. That was a rod cap bolt. Yep. Well, I got some good news and some bad news. The good news is I got a lot of bad news. And the bad news, the biggest bad news is I can't find the wrist pin. It is nowhere. The bottom of the rod is still here. We can see it is slightly damaged, and it has a somewhat perfectly circular shape stamped in it, as if this may have just launched the wrist pin out of the block and into its next life, because I'm sure it's fine, and I'm sure it's reinstalled in another 4B11T. But I don't see it. Not saying we won't find it, but it ain't looking like we're going to see it. But there's obviously a lot of damage around here and through here, and then there's a whole bunches of junkage in the sump. This is a leaf. Just leaf. The rest of this, who knows? We'll probably try to take this apart figure out what all that is. Let's go ahead and get the oil pump chain off.
Ooh, that was spicy.
Let's go ahead and unbolt the oil pump. Now we'll get this blasted apart. Definitely a bunch of junk in there. Wonder if I can... Does this come out? I think this comes out. It's just staked in there. I think I just lost all the evidence. Well, we have a few things to look at. This will not focus for my life, but it's not really torn up. It looks pretty decent, to be honest with you. There's a little bit of debris mark here on the side, but it's not terrible. It doesn't look bad. However, what does look bad is the screen for the pickup. There's chunks. There's even a piece of orange RTV, which, whoa, let's go over to the back of the engine. I think we know where that came from. So that was a sloppy job. But overall, this doesn't look like bearing material to me. This looks like a bunch of debris. It's aluminum covered in oil. It's kind of... It's interesting. It's like powdered aluminum, oil deposits, and some RTV. It's kind of soft feeling, to be honest with you. That looks like a piece of a leaf. I bet that this may be unrelated to the failure. I mean, okay, some of the metal bits could be from the failure, but I bet this was partially clogged anyway. The housings don't look too bad. I think the oil pump would be just fine, except for I kind of wrecked it pulling the screen out. Now we're going to get the oil filter off. We'll cut this, and we'll take a look by the end of the video. Performance filter. Next, we're going to unbolt the bottom of the block. Uh-oh, the crank sensor's in the way. All those are out. We got to pry the remain seal plate loose, which just fell right off pretty much. I guess you could just use this to pry. Whoa. Almost dropped it. Could have broken it. Well, this is pretty incredible. It's credible. It's a huge bite taken out of the bottom of that block. You can see where the broken off rod cap bolt was. It started to separate. This rod is bent into the counterweight. There's a few marks on the crankshaft, a couple marks on the other side, just south of the hole. The crank doesn't appear to be broken or totally mutilated, except for when you look at some of the marks from the last moments of this. You can look down inside and you can see that the wrist pin has been forcibly removed and likely rehomed. And then we go over to, it's not a bed plate, but you go over to the lower block half and it's very clear where the damage is. We're going to try to get the broken rod off. This turns really nice, by the way. Right there. We're going to see if we can get that off. I have my doubts. I'm going to try to hammer a socket onto it. This is going to work. It works. Oh. That's just going to... There we go. That can just stay there. We'll deal with that later. At this juncture, let's go ahead and unbolt the rest of the rod cap bolts. Trying to get some of the bearing shells out. Go ahead and drive the rods and pistons out. This one is going to be a little more challenging. Let's give it some help. I think we're moving. It's not working too well. We got a different punch now. It packs a little more
punch.
Aww. That one did not come out so nice. Let's go ahead and unbolt the main caps. Uh-oh, that one's got some damage. That's not the way the factory suggests you do that. Fixed it. There is a lot to look at here. Let's start with the rod bearings. Pretty decent wear. A little bit more wear. This is the top shell here, so that's going to see a little bit more wear. Now these shells were kind of messed up because it broke the bolt, turning it into a stud. It's kind of pried open, so you're going to have some damage when that happens. But that's from the failure, I think. And then back to cylinder 4. Pretty solid wear. Now, let's go to the rods and pistons. They're factory rods and pistons, Mitsubishi. Most of the pistons don't look too bad, but one of them looks extra bad. But the rod, it's got a slight angle to the dangle of that rod. It's not good. Now this one, here, we didn't put all the pieces together here. We got to have our exploded view. There's all the sections of the rod and then the rest of the pistons over there. Here's the top of the piston. As you can see, it's slightly damaged. This would make a good desktop piece. I got enough of this broken stuff, so if you guys want any of this, it'll all be for sale. And then we get to, well, there's that. I don't see the bushing for the wrist pin either. And we get to this cylinder. This rod looks pretty straight. I mean, they look good except for the ones that look bad, which I guess that's pretty profound as well. Now we go to the main bearings, and there's, I would say, above average wear, but I don't see anything that was coming apart. It looks like maybe it was starved of oil a few times or had a little bit of debris run through. But the crankshaft looks excellent. I mean, the journals look fantastic, which is why this is not an oil-related failure, even though the screen was plugged halfway up and we saw other issues. There's the problem child, and unfortunately, this kind of damage to the crank could have twisted the crank or bent the crank. Wrist pins are very strong, so this is probably going to be scrap. Unfortunately, I don't know what a 4B11 crank is worth, but I'm going to bet that one that went through this type of catastrophe, not so great. Let's take a look at the bottom of the block and get a better idea of just how much damage there is. It's just anything within reach, essentially. Let's take a look at the bores. It all looks good. I mean, there's definitely some vertical damage, vertical scratches, but it's not like I see hot spots or anything crazy. Yeah, that's some pretty heavy wear. This one's got some debris from its final moments. And back to cylinder 4. Yeah, it's pretty bad. Well, inside of the filter, there's definitely some sparkles, but they're not bearing colored. They're just aluminum colored. And the filter itself, well, it's not really loaded with metal. I mean, there's a few chunks in there. It's a little silvery. I really expected more metal in here. So I have a theory as to what happened here. I think that this engine was blown up or locked up or had some damage back in 2022 or 2023 when it was at my buddy's shop. And then it went to a different shop and got rebuilt. It has some nice aftermarket parts. I'm not going to say all the work was sloppy. It was actually pretty decent aside from the amount of debris left behind, which is what I think was in the pickup. We saw some aluminum powder or something from a roll-lock disc, and that can really cause some damage, and I think that's the damage we saw to the bearings. But that is not what failed in this engine. That was not the first failure. It would have led to eventual failure, but in this case, I think this is either a hydrolock situation from either a fuel delivery issue. I don't think it was water. There's no signs of rust in this engine. Or maybe this car was modified. Maybe a Lancer Evolution or Ralliart was modified. I think actually the question would be maybe it was stock, because I'm pretty sure this was modified and they probably were running a little bit of boost, and maybe they made too much, there's too much cylinder pressure for the connecting rods. That could have been why the center tube rods failed. One of them didn't fail completely, it's just bent. The other one bent a little bit, and probably once they start to bend, they bend a little bit more, and a little bit more, and eventually it bent enough to where the piston hit the counterweight on the crankshaft, because you shorten that distance when you bend a rod. And then because that crankshaft is spinning at super high RPM and has a bunch of momentum behind it, it just rips the piston up, and it probably ripped the piston up, ripped the wrist pin out at that time, and then the bent rod came down and just started hammering everything. It just annihilated everything in its path. And then at some point the wrist pin had enough and it wanted to go on to its next life, so the crankshaft and the connecting rod worked together to launch it out. I know we're being silly here, but that is probably what happened here. I think that is the case. I think I'll actually have a good cylinder head to sell, which is some recovery, and don't feel bad like I got taken at the auction. This car is really cheap. Yes, I expected to have a good engine because Copart said engine start program. Now, you can't really expect to get a good engine out of Copart just because they say it runs, because it could be knocking on all cylinders, have rods hanging out of it, and as long as it runs a little bit, they're going to say engine start program. But again, this car was cheap enough. It had a lot of really good parts on it. I'm definitely still going to come out okay on this, just not quite as shiny as I normally would have. So anyway, this was a big departure from last week. I wanted to have some carnage on the channel, and well, a car that I bought at the auctions filled that void. So if you'd like to buy any parts out of this engine or the entire vehicle, I dismantled the entire vehicle. It is long gone, but all the good stuff is left behind. Or anything else I've torn down, you can go to Importapart.com and peruse our inventory. We've been uploading our parts cards every single week. The website is fully functioning, as is my sister website, ProRebuild.com. That has all the rebuilt automotive electronics. As always, I love all the comments, all the feedback, and even the criticism. I love it all, and I'll catch you on the next one.